Hi guys, George here from Zero Period Productions, and today we're back with The Road to Blackwood, a mini-series of videos leading up to the Blackwood chapter for the Elder Scrolls Online. Last time, we toured the city of Leyawiin, which will serve as the central hub for the chapter. Today, however, we're talking about one of the base game updates for ESO, something that all players, including new ones, will be able to try out for themselves. The new tutorial system. In the past, ESO has released a new tutorial quest for each new chapter's launch, often themed around the new location and acting as a prelude to the story and characters of that content. However, it's often been looked at as a system with its share of flaws. Most notably that new players might not know where they're starting off, or that they might not want to immediately start off in the latest chapter's location. With Update 30 this June, this system is being completely changed by adding a new centralized tutorial quest, which will act as a means to better introduce the gameplay mechanics and, at the end, give the player a choice of where they want to start off. In today's video, we'll be going over this new level, some of the lore introduced in its quest, and how it stacks up against the previous system. Since Blackwood and Update 30 hasn't released yet, all of this is being recorded on the playtest server, which means that what we see today is still subject to change. Upon creating a new character, you'll wake up in a prison cell on the Isle of Balfiera. This is a location we haven't seen in any Elder Scrolls game since Daggerfall, making this the first 3D interpretation of the island. Balfiera is home to Clan Direnni, a clan of Altmer and Breton mages, and one of the oldest and most powerful dynasties in High Rock. You're greeted by an Altmer named Norianwe, a scholar working for Clan Direnni, who explains that you arrived via a magical portal, alongside a Daedra who is wreaking havoc across the Isle. Norianwe is a part of the Cinderil, the intelligence and research group under Clan Direnni, and is responsible for rescuing you, and asks you for your assistance in taking the island back. From here, you'll be walked through some of the basic mechanics of the game. You're given a chance to choose your weapon type, and then try it out against the targeting dummy. You're even given a chance to go back, change weapons, and try this combat tutorial again. To me, this is definitely an improvement over the old system, where you're typically just given one weapon type at the start of the tutorial, usually a greatsword, and forced to use that for the rest of the quest, regardless of your preferred playstyle. You'll be briefly introduced to stealth in order to sneak past a golem that has come under control of the Daedra, and then you'll come out onto the island itself. Your goal in all of this is to slay the Daedra to prevent it from accessing a structure called the Keyrite's Gallery, an ancient and magical series of gates and portals, connected across all of Tamriel and beyond. The means by which we arrived on Balfiera via portal go unexplained, and our character's past, before the start of the game, will likely always remain a mystery. You'll move across the island and slay a few controlled golems before reaching the entryway to the Keyrite's Gallery, the sky shard which powers the entrance having been destroyed in the Surge of Magicka during your arrival. You'll then retrieve a replacement sky shard and face a gargoyle mini-boss. During the tutorial, you'll hit level 3, just as you would in previous year's tutorials. This gives you a chance to choose a couple skills, as you figure out the combat a bit more. Upon returning with the sky shard, you'll open up the entrance to the Keyrite's Gallery itself, and face off against the Daedra, Shayazel. None of the combat encounters prove to be too difficult in this quest, as enemies seem to do not too much damage, and Norianwe acts as a healer for you as well. In the end, it's probably better to make the tutorial a bit easier, as new players are still getting their bearings and don't necessarily need to be thrown in at the deep end difficulty-wise. With Shayazel defeated, you'll enter the gallery, with Norianwe commenting that she's never seen it like this before. Your arrival and the spike in magical energy was enough to awaken the gallery, revealing the magical helix in the central column, and the gates themselves having opened up. These gates are what allow you to travel to the different starting zones, both base game and for the expansions. With the awakening of the gallery, Norianwe says she has her work cut out for her, and that the implications and research of all of this will keep her occupied, possibly for 100 years. When speaking to the events of all this, she even goes on to say that she believes fate might have brought you here, possibly even machinations of Adamantine Tower itself. Part of her research will be trying to learn more about the tower, the gallery, and how they might be connected. The gallery features 8 possible gates to be used, one for each of the 3 base game starting zones of Stros Mackay, Canarthy's Roost, and Bleakrock Isle, as well as a gate for each of the chapters, Morrowind, Somerset, Elsewhere, Greymore, and the upcoming Blackwood chapter. Blackwood's gate is the most prominent of the available gates, and my assumption is that this will rotate to whatever the most current chapter is, meaning that next year's chapter will take its place once it's released. Since I have all the chapters, I see the maximum amount of gates available, but for players who don't have certain chapters, my assumption is that they'll just show up as blank. There's also 8 empty gates, leaving the potential for 8 future expansions or locations to be visited via these doorways. Norianwe even says that the gates connect to Tamriel and beyond, opening up the possibility for chapters that might take place in different realms of Oblivion. When approaching any of these gates, you'll hear the theme for the accompanying zone or chapter, which helps to establish its identity and feel. Inspecting any of the gates will allow for Norianwe to give a bit of information on the zone, and the story accompanying it. By choosing a gate, you'll leave Balfiera and embark on your adventures. Now, one thing to keep in mind is this is just to determine where you'll start off after you leave the tutorial, but you can still travel to any other zone after this, immediately. For new players, this does act as a better way of introducing the different storylines and quest arcs across ESO, rather than immediately plopping them down in the latest chapter that they own. There are some things about the new tutorial and the new system that I do want to touch on, and while I think this does improve upon the old system, there's also some ways in which I think this can still stand to be improved upon. First off, the Isle of Balfiera. I hope we get to see it again, or even see more of it in the future. The portion we see in the tutorial is pretty small, and intentionally so, but that leaves the rest of the island as a possible location later on in ESO's lifetime. The way that Clan Direnni and the Adamantine Tower are discussed in the quest almost feels like a tease for something more, and could provide us with a chance to learn more about these parts of Elder Scrolls lore. If the Adamantine Tower had a hand in us being brought here and thus led to the start of our adventures, I'd love to have that explored a bit more later on. Now that we've met someone from Clan Direnni's Intelligence Guild, that leaves the opportunity to meet with them again, the same way that we got involved with the Psijic Order during the Somerset chapter. In regards to the quest itself, I think they did a good job of introducing the combat mechanics, although this is something they've largely had down in previous years' tutorials as well. While I enjoyed the quest, and it does feel like a unified introduction to the Elder Scrolls Online as a whole, I also miss how tutorials were an introduction to the new chapter, for elsewhere we got to see a dragon attack and help fend it off, which led directly into the main questline for that expansion. For Greymoor, we met Fëanorian and fought against the Icereach Coven, one of the antagonists for that story. These chapter tutorials had served as a really good framing device to set up the main quests themselves, and while they were optional, I felt like they provided some great context to the larger storylines. I can't help but feel like we're losing a bit of that if this is to be the only tutorial quest moving forward. With this new unified quest, we don't have access to those previous tutorials, as everyone will start off in this one regardless. One thing I would love to see is for ZeniMax Online to take those previous year's quests and make non-tutorial versions of them. And there's a precedent for this too. They did it for Morrowind's tutorial quest and made it the side quest for Seyda-Neen, for players who had either skipped that tutorial or played a different one. If anything, for chapters like Elsewhere and Greymoor where those tutorials lead directly into their respective story, I'd want to start off doing those quests once I left the Keyrite Gallery. It's something to think about for the future, and as someone who is very focused on the narrative in ESO, and knows others who are as well, I think it could help to maintain some of that storytelling. What has me excited about all of this is some of the lore and implications. Balfiera, Clan Direnni, and Adamantine Tower have always really appealed to me. Clan Direnni is simultaneously mysterious, yet a well-known dynasty. Hell, they have their own intelligence guild. How many families can say the same? Adamantine Tower is the oldest structure on all of Nirn. It's one of the towers of the world, and there's a lot within the metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls that can be explored here as a result. The Keyrite's Gallery feels like it plays into this really well, and that magical helix in the central pillar, to me, almost feels like it's meant to represent a part of Tamriel's DNA. It would explain the Gallery's connection to the rest of Tamriel, and why the gates can connect to these various places. The Isle of Balfiera itself could even be seen as some sort of central node for Tamriel, from which everything else in the world connects back to. And now to speculate a little bit. And some people are probably going to roll their eyes since this is pure speculation and isn't even something that we'll see for years from now. I wonder if all of this will tie in at all to the Elder Scrolls 6. What if we're going to see Balfiera and Direnni Tower then? And granted, ESO is set in the Second Era, and I assume Elder Scrolls 6 will be set 1,000 years in the future, in the Fourth Era, after the events of Skyrim, but what if this could be a tease of that theme, of exploring more of the towers and their impact on the world? As it is, we don't get to see Adamantine Tower itself in this quest. The Keyrite Gallery is a separate structure on the island. Whether we get to see that later on in ESO, in the Elder Scrolls 6, or even both, I think that's something really worth exploring. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this new system, the Isle of Balfiera, and more. I think this new tutorial is a step in the right direction, and having a unified start to the game helps to point players in the right direction. With tutorials in ESO, you only need to play through them once, and on new characters you can opt to skip it entirely. But if this is going to be the only tutorial from now on, it means that we're losing out on some of the really cool storytelling that we've had in the past. And I hope that's something ZeniMax keeps in mind moving forward, and maybe changes by adding new versions of those previous tutorial quests as accessible quests in the world. But you'll be able to try this new tutorial out for yourselves when Blackwood and Update 30 launch on June 1st for PC and June 8th on consoles. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.